Hello and welcome to another episode of the Girls to the Front podcast. It's the end of the month, so that means it is time for a monthly recap. Today's podcast episode is going to be recapping everything I've done, watched, listened to and read during May. So let's get into it. So May has felt like a very delayed spring in terms of the weather and the feelings that we're experiencing right now. I feel like we should have experienced them in March, even the beginning of April, but no, we're experiencing them now in May, which is absolutely fine. I am still super grateful that we have got really lovely dry weather, and I'm going to touch wood when I say this because it's Wales, this weather could change, but spring has felt really delayed this year, and this is actually really reflective of how my cycle is feeling at the moment. I don't know whether it's just coinciding or whether it's like massive coincidence or whether this is a reflection of the seasons, but my seasons in my cycle have just massively shifted. So if you've listened to the episode of the podcast where I talk about seasons and how you've got spring, summer, autumn and winter, and they reflect certain points in your cycle. So, winter is more like your menstrual when you bleed, and then you've got spring, which is more like your follicular phase. You've got summer, which is ovulation, and then you've got autumn, which is your luteal phase. I feel like in the last 3-4 months, have shifted a cycle, shifted a season. So now when I'm experiencing my period, I am now, when I go into what should be spring, I feel like I'm still massively in winter, and I'm like coming off my period and then feeling like super anxious, and all those feelings I used to feel at the end of my cycle, I'm now feeling at the beginning of my cycle. It's just different, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. I am just currently learning to work with why this is happening, and I'm just learning to work with it and just ride the waves and just trying to deal with it head on and just trying to deal with it as it comes. My cycles my cycle might shift back, my seasons might shift again, but this is I think a good prompt for me to talk about just really briefly about how these things can change, and this is why I advocate for documenting and just being aware of your cycle, because these things do shift, and sometimes it doesn't have to be like a pinpoint reason. There doesn't have to be an explanation for it. They just move. So I am experiencing this right now. I will talk more about it, I think, in a future podcast episode. But yeah, it's just, I'm now trying to navigate a new feeling around my cycle, and it's frustrating because I feel like I'd finally gotten to grips with what my cycle was and what my cycle felt like, and now I feel like I'm starting from scratch a little bit. But yeah, just navigating it. So this is my message to you, to just be nothing is ever fucking figured out. It's always going to surprise you, and that's absolutely fine. These things will always throw curveballs. So May has started off. It's been full of bank holidays. It has meant that now everyone thinks they work a 4-day working week and not a 5-day working week. I advocate for a 4-day working week, so let's just embrace it and do it, and we'll all drop a Monday or a Friday, whatever that works for you. But yeah, so the first bank holiday of May was when Amy did her Project 228. If you haven't listened to the podcast episode, please go back and listen to the episode that I've done with Amy. The stuff that she talks about in terms of what she wished she knew when you're younger are just phenomenal. I think they're lessons that even if you are an older human, they are stuff that you can embed into your lives now, and I think you should pay attention to. There's some really lovely stuff that Amy talks about in terms of relationships, and it doesn't have to be life partners or anything like that, but I think there's a lot to learn from, not just those relationships, but also with your friendships, family, people like that. So yeah, please go back and listen to it. And then it's kind of I think dropping a day with bank holidays when you work a 9 to 5 means that you've got a lot to catch up on then Tuesday to Friday. So I've just been trying to navigate it being super busy in work too. And yeah, it's that theme is just going to roll right across into June, because I have got 2 conferences coming up that are not based in South Wales. I've got to travel for them, and I'm sure I will talk about these in future episodes, but I am already feeling the anxiety of having to travel alone to places I have never been. So yeah, more on that later, I guess, once I've experienced it, once I've done it. But yeah, it's just been busy. Like dropping that day means that I have felt on some level like I'm chasing my tail. But yeah, but in terms of like work and what I do every day in my 9 to 5, but also in my 5 to 9, I guess, I've come across a podcast episode that I want other people to listen to because I want to talk about it so much. So the podcast is a revisionist history podcast episode, and it talks about the crisis in girls' sports. It's with Malcolm Gladwell and it's with Lauren Fleshman and Linda Flanagan. It talks about how there is a kind of a crisis in terms of having girls drop off, girls not interested and girls not participating in sport. Now, I do have an issue with sport, and I do have points of contention with the idea that sport is the gold standard and that's what we're aiming humans to do. But it's a really interesting episode. I love the way that Malcolm Gladwell breaks this podcast episode down. I think he does it with all of his podcast episodes, but basically, Lauren and Linda have published work on this crisis and on kind of the coaching culture around women and girls sports. And so Malcolm Gladwell has read these and has now broken them down. So basically the point of it is that he talks about being a Martian, and then he breaks things down into the most simplistic form. So even if you were a complete alien to the subject matter, you should be able to come in and have some level of understanding. But anyway, within that, they talk about kind of what are the things that should be banned in terms of girls sport. There's a really interesting conversation about male coaches, about female anatomy and physiology, and how we need more understanding of this, and we need more people to bring up knowledge around how things like menstrual cycles affect training and how we should be talking and disseminating information on that. But yeah, I'm super interested in what other people feel about it. There's also conversation around parents' involvement, around kit, around body image. I just want to have a conversation with someone about it. So if someone listening to this could please listen to this podcast episode, I'd love to. In fact, actually, you don't really need to listen to the podcast episode, but there's just some really interesting talking points that I would like to talk. So, that has been occupying my brain space quite a lot in the last week or two, and it feeds really well into what I do in terms of work and what I do in terms of Girls to the Front, which is like trying to increase engagement with activity and increase engagement with play. It is a bit of a shame that this podcast episode only talks about it in the context of sport, but anyway, I would love people to listen to it so I can have a conversation. I've put it everywhere, so I'm so sorry if this is now the 90th time of you hearing me talk about this podcast episode. Right, moving on from the podcast episode, other stuff I've been listening to. So my Spotify algorithm, I've said it a million times, is fucking nailing it recently. They are trying to bring some new artists into my life that I have not listened to. Yeah, it's been awesome because I've just found so many new bands as a result of it. And I've also got to give a shout out to like other humans that are recommending stuff to me. And then as a result, Spotify is just, yeah, giving me some great ones. So I have been listening to a lot of Fiddlehead recently. They keep coming up. Every single playlist that I put on, Fiddlehead will come up on it. The song is called Down University. This is the one that I've been listening to the most. I feel like it's incredibly ironic that this song gets into my brain so much, considering there are a lot of lyrics in there that talk about not letting degrees define you and not letting education standards be the measure of success. Coming from someone who has a PhD and seeks extreme validation in people telling me that I've done a good job in my work, I feel like this song is maybe taps into some of my biggest insecurities and some of my biggest fears, but I fucking love it. So that is the next song you're going to hear on this podcast. I have always considered myself someone that can read. Seems like a stupid statement. But in terms of like, I love books and I feel like I can read books and I feel like I read books often. So I would consider myself a reader. And then I met other people that read books and I thought, fucking hell, I don't read at all. For example, one of my closest and bestest and most dearest friends, Kerry Pillai, build another wall of books on Instagram if you are not following her already, will just churn through books at an outstanding rate, and it is incredibly impressive because by the time I have finished one, Kerry has read about 20 and has like 20 on the go. So I've always considered myself a reader, and then I hung around with Kerry and I was like, I don't think I read. But this month, I finally managed to finish a book that has been sitting on my shelf. Actually, it was sat in my van to start with, and then it made its way from the van onto my kitchen table. And then Passag, Kerry with the black hair, my Kerry, moved the book somewhere else. But yeah, I finally got around to reading it. The book is called Slug by Holly McNish. I might have mentioned it before, but it is a beautiful book of poetry. And when I first started it, I was a bit like, I don't know if I'm going to get on with this book because it's a poetry book. And then the first poem just fucking blew my mind. So there is some really lovely topics that Holly covers within this book. And I know that she's got loads of other poetry books that have got a similar kind of ethos and a similar writing style that I really want to dive into. So if you have a Holly McNish book that I haven't read yet, please, 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 can you pass it on? If not, signpost me to the next one that I should read, because, yeah, I thought Slug was phenomenal. But, yeah, so the first opening ones talk about your human body and how it exists, and the idea being that every now and then you can just zone into the fact that all you are is a skeleton, and it really blows your mind, and that you are just a walking bag of bones. And just feeling emotions and things like that. But yeah, she covers loads of topics around parenting, but the ones that really resonate with me are the ones around relationships and the ones around like the shame and stigma around the way that women and girls are perceived and the way that, parents are perceived. And yeah, there's loads of stuff in there around relationships and sex and how we should communicate and talk about these things. And yeah, I did not expect this book to have an impact on me in the way that it has. And yeah, I shout out Julie Jones for lending me the book. I now need to give it back. I'm so sorry I've had it for so long. But yeah, it's a really beautiful, amazing book of poetry. And if you are someone that is like, I don't read poetry, I don't either, but I fucking loved this book so, so much. So yeah, there's a bit at the start where she talks about how the book was initially just supposed to be a poetry book. She was supposed to be writing it, and then lockdown happened, and then she really sadly lost her grandmother at some point during the writing process. So she actually rewrote the first part of the book to reflect that and to talk about losing her grandmother and how that impacted her. And there's some lovely poems just put in throughout the book that talks about her relationship with her grandmother and what her grandmother taught her and the ways in which society has been very different and the kind of thoughts and stuff around just women throughout generations and stuff. But yeah, it's a really beautiful book that talks about that losing someone in a way as well. This month has really made me think a lot about death and about losing people. I've been really fortunate that no one incredibly close to me. I haven't lost anyone incredibly close to me, but I know people that have. And there was an instance a few weeks ago in work where we were told that someone had passed away. Having spoken to that person a few weeks prior to that, it really hit hard that one day you exist and you have conversations, and then the next day you don't. And the idea that your last conversation with someone could be the lasting memory that they have of you, and that nothing is ever promised, nothing is ever certain, and making sure that all those conversations, for me, that conversation that I had with that person was talking about working from home and the balance that you have with working from home and trying to motivate yourself. And it was a great conversation. There was nothing, it was just a great conversation. They were laughing and joking as they normally would. But the thought that that's the last conversation is quite baffling. And now they don't exist on this earth has really tied my brain in in knots, really. But yeah, it's just like a reminder that, you know, things like time is finite. Anything you do could be the last time you do it. Any action that you take could be the last time you've taken that action, any conversation you've had. And it kind of sent me into a meltdown around how I finish my conversations with people and how I want to be remembered on this earth and the legacy and stuff like that. So it's been ruminating in my brain quite a lot. But yeah, the next song, it feeds really well into that. So the next song that I've been listening to quite a lot this month is by Iron Chic. It's called Time Keeps on Slipping. For obvious reasons, this has been on a loop, on repeat. But yeah, it's just, I feel like I remind people about this every single fucking month. But time is finite, and people are going to remember your last actions, and people are also going to remember you and how you did things. And if just make sure that everything you fucking do is stuff you're proud of, because if you stop existing, then you want the lasting memories of you to be stuff that you're insanely proud of. That's my attitude anyway. So yeah. So, speaking of readers, I'm going to link back to what I was talking about earlier. Speaking of readers and people and incredible readers of books, I got to go to Edinburgh this month with Julie Jones and Kerry Pillai, and honest to God, it was a fucking awesome few days. I love Edinburgh. I've said it like the whole time since, but I could go to Edinburgh and do nothing. As in, like, I could go to Edinburgh with no plans and just happily sit in coffee shops and just walk around and just be in Edinburgh. If you've never been, I really recommend that you go, if you have the privilege of doing so. It is just one of the most beautiful cities in terms of, like, the architecture, but it's also just so, like, draped in history. Like, everything about it is just like such a huge learning thing. If you love history, it is just the best place for you to just go. You don't even have to book or go on any tours. It's just written everywhere. Like, you can't move for it. But I got to go. This is it was the fourth time that I'd been to Edinburgh. And it was really nice to go during a time where it wasn't busy. So we normally go, I've been to Hogmanay, which is the New Year's Eve celebrations, and we've been during the Fringe, and it's always really busy and really hectic, and you don't really get a chance to just sit and just look at stuff. So it was really incredible to go and just experience it and not necessarily be on the clock, just walking around. And yeah, we did all the normal touristy things. So we did the castle, we did some of the closest, we did a ghost tour, but my favourite part by far was Surgeons Hall. I think it's because I hadn't been there before. I've done a few of the tours before, I've heard some of those stories before, but yeah, going to Surgeons Hall was amazing. And yeah, I think Edinburgh is like one of the epicentres for medicine and kind of the art of doing surgery and teaching people how to do surgery. And it's mad thinking where we are now at in terms of medicine and the ability to save people's lives is based on people in Edinburgh butchering criminals for the sake of science and teaching. But yeah, I loved it. It was really good for my soul. I am so happy that I went. I'm amped that I went with two amazing humans that made existing very, very easy for a few days and made the whole thing just seem amazing. So yeah, if you haven't been, just go. Book it tomorrow, but I would highly recommend. While I was in Edinburgh, obviously you got to listen to some Scottish music. You got to listen to some people that originate from Scotland. Obviously, one of those bands was Biffy Clyro. The other band that I always listen to on repeat, and if you were going to ask me every month, okay, name an artist that you've listened to at least once, it's always Frightened Rabbit. So the song that you're going to hear now is The Woodpile by Frightened Rabbit. This is really apt that I'm going to talk about it this month. It's because in May, it is Scott, the lead singer's birthday. Scott took his own life, and it makes a lot of Frightened Rabbit's lyrics really hit a lot harder, having known that fact. But yeah, so once I got back from Edinburgh, it coincided with my Instagram being full of like tributes and full of some stuff around Scott and the lyrics and Frightened Rabbit and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, they've definitely been on my listening list this month. I would recommend going to an account called Frightened Rabbit Postcards. So it's F Rabbit Postcards. The person that is in charge of this account creates some really beautiful postcards based on Frightened Rabbit's lyrics. You can purchase these, but I just think they're so incredible to look at on their grid, and just to look at and see the art that's created around them as well. So yeah, and also on that note, if you haven't come across already, there is a charity called Tiny Changes, which is inspired by some Frightened Rabbit lyrics, and they are a charity that helps young people's mental health. So yeah, go check those things out. And yeah, the next song you're going to hear is The Woodpile by Frightened Rabbit. I haven't intended this month's podcast to be fueled by a lot of death and time is finite reminders, but it has certainly gone that way. So I'm going to change the pace a little bit now. What else has happened in May? Some fucking big things. Some things I'm really fucking proud of, and some things that I really, really believe in, and some things that I think are directly linked to my purpose on this earth and why I do stuff. So the first thing, Owen, thank you so much for your time, kindness and patience. I learnt to screen print this month. This is something that a 15-year-old me would have thought was fucking cool as hell. So I've done the process from literally start to finish. It has not been a smooth process. I massively offended Owen in the first week by saying that this should be really easy. Why don't I get it? After fucking up trying to put the coating on the screens, to which Owen was like, how fucking dare you? But yeah, since then, it's been a bit better. I've only had 2 meltdowns. But yeah, I've learned how to screen print. I still need supervision. I still need help and assistance. But I have started screen printing my own stuff. And I'm so insanely proud of myself for learning this skill. So if you see anything Girls to the Front related in the last few weeks, it's all been made by myself. Like, by my actual self. So there's some patches that you can buy now that have been screen printed and then cut by me. There's some t-shirts, long sleeve hoodies, tops that have all been screen printed and then dyed by myself. And the zine covers have been screen printed, and the zine workshop that just happened, the covers for those will be screen printed. Yeah, and I just feel like it's just opened up a whole new realm of possibilities and stuff to do. So that I'm really proud of. And then secondly, we finally pulled the pin on getting stuff online. So Girls to the Front now exists online. It doesn't have to be done in person. You can now access all the workouts and all the community parts of Girls to the Front online. It exists. It's out in the world. I believe in it so fucking much that this could be the thing that changes the world. And I just need the tipping point to happen. It's happening slowly, like one person at a time, which makes me so grateful and so excited. But now it's just like that momentum to like keep having one at a time until it fucking tips and explodes. So yeah, and I'm amped that I'm doing this alongside Owen with the Anti-Gym Gym Club. The ethos is the exact same across the board. But I'm so excited about the possibilities of this. It's something that has just been mentioned and talked about for like probably years on some level. It might not have been in direct relation to Girls to the Front, but this idea and the bringing together of people, good humans, and trying to get good humans to show up not just for themselves but for other people, and just creating a community of lighthouses has just been something that we've spoken about so much, and now I'm like, yes, it's finally fucking happening. So Girls to the Front is online. If you haven't, like, please go and look at it and go check it out and join and support it in any way, shape or form. I would be so, so grateful. Like, spread the word, tell someone you know, like tell some parents, tell a young person, tell a school, tell a fucking charity. I don't know. Tell people. Like, that is the biggest thing that you could do. Like, people ask questions all the time, like, oh, how can I help? Like, what can I do? This is how you can help now. Like, let's get the scales tipping in favour of changing the world. So with that note, I'm now just going to play a song that makes me want to fucking punch shit. It fills my heart with, like, this emotion that I just want to, like, I don't know, I talk about it all the time. I can't explain the emotion. It makes you want to like ball your fists up and like throw shit. But that song is The Tide by Reviver. Do you know what I found out as well? Literally yesterday, is that Erica Frias is now singing vocals on Toodles and the Hectic Pity. So things are just colliding now. I can't fucking believe it. Okay, so I love that I mentioned like I would recap stuff I've watched because I don't watch anything. And this is like the shortest part of the whole thing where I'm like writing down like, oh, what can I recommend that I've watched? Or what can I say I've watched? I've watched nothing. I don't watch stuff. I don't watch films. I very rarely watch series, and that's only because people have said you need to watch this. So one thing I have watched this month, thank you for the recommendation, Aaron Hill. I have watched The Steeltown Murders, which is based off the true story of the Steeltown Murders that happened in Port Talbot and how they caught the killer eventually. So thanks. But I only watched that as a new thing because Aaron was literally like, you'll like this, you need to watch this. But I don't like watching new things. I have a comfort blanket of like a few series that I'll just watch on loop. By now you should know what those are. When I was in the run-up to coming on my period, two things happened to me. So I was feeling quite emotional. The first thing was we were watching How to Train Your Dragon because it's just a phenomenal film. It's one of the ones I'll watch on loop. And I've recommended this song before on the podcast. The bit where Toothless goes on his first flight literally hurts my heart so much because it's like, imagine doing that. Like, imagine, it would be amazing. And the music around it. So I bawled my eyes out while watching that through pure joy, but I was like, I can't handle the emotion. The other thing that was on in the background was Kerry with the black hair loves New Girl. And it was the episode where Nick and Jess finally realise that they're in love and that they should spend their lives together. And they come up in the lift in the thing. Oh, I've just realised that if you haven't watched New Girl, I've just done a massive spoiler. Well, if you haven't fucking watched it, you should watch it. So that really got me this month. Which would make sense that now another song I haven't stopped listening to this month is Green Light by Lorde, because that is the song playing when that happens. So that's the next song you're going to hear. So to recap this month, it's been filled with like a pretty endless cycle of like big emotions, thoughts and actions and stuff that like I am really proud of and stuff that has caused a lot of big feelings and emotions. I feel so proud of myself for like all the stuff that I'm trying to create and trying to do, and I believe in it loads, but I still do have like an intense imposter syndrome that I have to try and keep at bay. The voices like do get quieter, But at the moment, it's like, yeah, trying to combat the fact that there are some days where I have massive things of doubt and I'm like, I'm not the right person to do this. But yeah, just trying to just trying to relentlessly move forward and just trying to like push the boundaries on what's capable and trying to like really embed Girls to the Front as like a thing that every girl in the world should engage with and should do. Like, imagine, I don't know, even 100 girls just wearing a Girls to the Front t-shirt at the moment feels fucking incredible. But imagine like that's 10x that, 100x that. But yeah, so it's been filled with these big emotions, and there's a lot in there around like just like reminders of like loss, reminders that, you know, they're like about creating legacies and doing stuff that you're proud of, because those actions could be the last actions you have. But yeah, just trying to like I said, just relentlessly move forward and trying to like move the needle and just trying to do something every single day, even if it's one tiny thing, just trying to like do that one tiny thing. So yeah, so I'm going to finish the podcast. I'm going to finish the recap for me. Just done literally yesterday, just done a 4th zine workshop for the Girls to the Front zine. So stand by for that. That's going to be coming up in the next few weeks, or it's going to be released in the next few weeks. We did celebrating women throughout history, or celebrating female role models or trailblazers or people that you really resonate with. It was a really cool topic. We had lots of conversations and some really interesting ones too around like the monarchy and around female leaders like Margaret Thatcher, and trying to unpack some of the problematic elements of that. But yeah, we're having some really like awesome conversation, and it felt like this most recent one has felt like the most kind of relaxed and authentic, and just the one that where they're finally getting it. I think zine workshops are like, creating zines is, I think, difficult for a culture and a group of humans that are told that nothing less than perfection is acceptable. Because you see it when they're creating their pages. There is so much deliberation around where one scrap piece of paper is going to go, instead of just like creating a message, if that makes sense. Because that's instilled in them from school, and it's instilled in them in society, is that everything you do has to be perfect. It has to be award-winning art. It has to be something that you create and it's going to be phenomenal, and people are going to want to buy it as like a piece they're put on their living room wall. And actually it's way more about the creative process, and it's way more about the message at the end of it than it is actually about the thing. So it felt like this time it had, that message was getting clearer, and just being able to like just create stuff that has some sort that will resonate with people, or just create stuff for the fun of creating it. But yeah, so it was awesome, and I loved it so much. So yeah, stand by for that. But the last kind of message I'm going to leave you with is, please fucking support Girls to the Front online. If you know someone that would benefit from it, I would massively appreciate if you could share it, if you could talk about it, fucking shoehorn it into everything. That would be unbelievable. So yeah, so I'm going to leave you with one last song. I was having a conversation last week around Descendants. I'm wanting to get into Descendants music, but I have like a thing around, it's so overwhelming because the back catalogue is so huge. Where do you start? So again, Aaron Hill, getting his second mention in today's podcast, has put together a playlist that he shared with me, so I'm going to dive into that, so I'm excited about that. But while I was screen printing, a song came on that I thought was originally by Drain, but it's not. So the song is Good Good Things. I am going to play the Drain version because that's the version that I fell in love with, and that's the version that I hear in my mind. That's not to detract from the fact that it is originally a Descendant song, and it is a cover. But yeah, I found it weird that I was like, oh, I want to get into them and I want to explore them, and then realising and putting two and two together that this song that I love is actually by this band that I want to get into. So yes, that's the song that's going to play you out. Play me out, play you out, play me out. Playing out. Anyway, so as always, thanks for listening, thanks for supporting, and stand by for whoever the guest on the podcast is next.